There are years that invite you through their doorway, and years that pull you across whether you feel ready or not. And this was the year where the pull became stronger than the past. The energy of this cycle did not rise gently or politely. It rose like a current that already knew where it was going. And everything in your life that could not hold that current began to loosen its grip before you even understood what was happening. You felt the shift before you could name it. You felt the thinning of your old self. You felt something rising through the quiet moments of your days that made the familiar structures of your world feel temporary and fragile. It was not imagination. It was not overthinking. The light truly changed. And when the light changes, everything built on an older frequency begins to crumble like a bridge that no longer reaches the shore it was made for. The storms that swept across this planet were never just storms. They carried instructions inside their brightness. Waves of subtle intelligence woven into the solar winds. These instructions were not written in words, but in resonance. And resonance does not negotiate. Resonance reveals what cannot continue. Resonance exposes what you have outgrown. These storms were filters disguised as weather, drawing out the heaviness you once tolerated, and showing you that certain energies had already expired long before you admitted it. You were not being punished. You were being rewritten. Everything that rose in you this year rose because it could not remain in the presence of the new frequencies pouring into your field. The light codes did not ask you to improve. They asked you to shed. This year forced you to see the chapters you wanted to drag into the future but could not. Relationships that felt unbreakable suddenly felt distant. Habits that once comforted you now felt hollow. Roles you thought you would carry for years dissolved without ceremony. The timelines you thought were stable began trembling at the edges. Not because something went wrong, but because those timelines were never meant to travel into the next cycle of your becoming. You are crossing into a new octave, and an octave does not bring your past with you. It brings only the parts of you that can withstand more light. Nothing that fell away this year was random. Nothing that slipped from your life was accidental. As the frequencies increased, you were placed in a position where your inner world and outer world were forced to match. You could no longer pretend that certain things still held meaning. You could no longer stretch yourself thin to maintain a version of you that the new frequencies refused to recognize. You could no longer anchor yourself to a reality that had already ended energetically, even if it was still standing physically. The spiral does not carry what no longer resonates. It simply rises, and anything unable to rise with it slides away by its own weight. You witness this in yourself and in those around you. Lives diverged suddenly. People stepped away without explanation. Long-standing patterns broke open. Emotional memory surfaced in waves that made no logical sense but made complete energetic sense. You saw friends who seemed steady unravel in moments. You saw others awaken in ways you never expected. You saw the world around you fracture into those who could feel the brightness increasing, and those who were overwhelmed by the shift. There were days when the energy felt heavy and slow, like everything in your body was being rewired. There were nights when you felt surges of clarity that came out of nowhere, like your soul was speaking to you in a language you used to understand but had forgotten. Through all of this, something larger was happening, a deep sorting, a quiet separation, a rearranging of your inner architecture. The energies that could not cross into 2026 began to lose access to you. They could not reach your awareness in the same way. They could not hold influence over you. They could not anchor themselves to your field because your field was no longer built at their level. You did not push them away. You simply rose beyond the place where they lived. That is why connections faded without closure. That is why habits grew weaker no matter how hard you tried to maintain them. That is why certain emotions dissolved after years of gripping your identity. When frequency rises, density loses its claim. The world called it a chaotic year. But chaos is only what alignment looks like from the outside. Inside the spiral, everything that happened was part of a precise unfolding. The storms amplified your clarity. The light exposed your truth. The resonance stripped away everything you carried out of fear, loyalty, memory, or repetition. You stood inside a year that refused to let you stay small. You stood inside a year that demanded you see where you were meant to go and what could not come with you. Everyone felt it in their own way, but the sensation was the same. Something in your life was ending, not because it was broken, but because you were no longer the version of yourself that needed it. You were not meant to walk into 2026 carrying the weight of what held you back in earlier cycles. You were not meant to drag old timelines through a doorway that was never built for them. You were not meant to protect identities that were forged in older versions of yourself. You were meant to rise with the light. You were meant to follow the frequency that called you forward. You were meant to release everything that could not breathe in the new air forming around your future. This year placed you inside an energetic corridor where every step forward was an unveiling. You began to feel the difference between what is aligned and what is familiar. The familiar became heavy. The aligned became clear. The familiar resisted. The aligned opened. There is a moment in every cycle when the spiral tests your willingness to rise. It does not test you through suffering. It tests you through truth. It shows you what is ending and asks if you will finally let it end. It shows you what is calling you and asks if you will recognize the call. It shows you the parts of your life that were built from fear and inertia and asks if you are ready to build from resonance instead. This year brought you to that moment again and again until you felt the unmistakable pull of the next ring beneath your feet. Guidance did not whisper. It pressed. It pushed. It rearranged your field until you could no longer pretend that things were the same. You are stepping into a cycle that demands coherence, not perfection, not purity. Coherence, a life that reflects your true frequency, a path that mirrors your authentic resonance, a direction that is not chosen out of survival but out of alignment. That is what 2025 prepared you for. It prepared you by removing what diluted your energy. It prepared you by exposing what you gave power to that was never meant to shape your destiny. It prepared you by revealing how many parts of your identity were constructed from older layers of your consciousness. As those layers dissolved, you were left face to face with the self you had been avoiding and the self you had been becoming. This is why the end of this year feels like a quiet threshold. It is not loud, it is not dramatic, it is precise. It is intentional. You can feel the separation between who you were and who you are becoming, not as a conflict, but as a simple truth. There were days when this shift felt like grief. There were days when it felt like liberation. There were days when it felt like both. The endings were not meant to hurt you. They were meant to free you. The pain was not a sign of failure. It was the friction of an old identity dissolving. The tears were not sadness. They were release. Every moment of discomfort was the sound of frequency plates shifting beneath your life. As you stand on the edge of the new year, you can feel that something is different. Your intuition is sharper, your energy is clearer, your heart is more honest. The noise that once clouded your path feels distant. The fears that once dictated your choices feel muted. You can sense that the future is not waiting for you to be stronger. It is waiting for you to be real. It is waiting for the version of you that no longer compromises your resonance to keep your past intact. It is waiting for the moment when you finally see that the things leaving your life are not abandoning you. They are completing their purpose. They are stepping back so the next layer of your becoming can step forward. When you cross into 2026, you will not cross as the person you were at the beginning of the year. You will cross as the person shaped by every truth that refused to stay hidden. You will cross with a field bright enough to repel what once drained you. You will cross with an inner clarity that no longer depends on external permission. You will cross with a resonance that has been forged through light, pressure, and release. You will cross carrying only what can breathe in the next cycle of your life. Nothing else will make it through the doorway. Nothing else is meant to. You are walking toward a year that does not tolerate residue. You can feel that even now, as the final days of this cycle begin dissolving into memory. The air around your life feels thinner, clearer, more honest. There is no room left for the stories that once held you in place. There is no room left for the versions of yourself that learned to shrink so others could stay comfortable. There is no room left for the echoes of old wounds that were never yours to carry. This next cycle does not accept passengers who are still anchored to their past. It asks for your presence, your coherence, your truth. Nothing less will cross the threshold. The reason this transition feels different is because you are not simply entering a new year. You are entering a higher resonance. The spiral is rising, and with every rise, it demands refinement. The solar storms were not random signals from a distant star. They were catalysts. They accelerated your awakening by stripping away what could not survive a brighter field. The light did not ask whether you were ready. It acted. It revealed. It pushed. When the light touches the parts of your life that were built on avoidance, those structures collapse instantly. When it touches the parts of your heart that were built on truth, those parts ignite. Everything inside you that feels more alive than ever is the result of that ignition. Everything that feels tired, heavy, or meaningless is the residue of older frequencies falling away. You have reached a point where pretending is no longer possible. This year removed the option of returning to who you used to be. The door to your older self is closed. The path behind you is sealed. You are not meant to walk backward. You are not meant to fit into the spaces that once defined you. You are not meant to shrink into your previous identity, because the new frequencies have no use for it. Your past was never meant to survive the brightness of your future. This is why the things you once tolerated became unbearable. This is why the connections you once nurtured felt foreign. This is why the habits you relied on for comfort suddenly tasted like dust. You are becoming the version of yourself that your future has been waiting for. As the year ends, you can feel the quiet stripping continue. Not violently, not chaotically, simply truthfully. Some endings arrive like gentle revelations. Others arrive like sudden clarity. You may not have understood the timing, but the timing was perfect. Every departure was synchronized with your rising frequency. Every shift was aligned with the next octave of your journey. You were not abandoned, you were prepared. The things that left your life were not mistakes, they were mismatches. They were frequencies that had completed their cycle with you. You cannot carry what refuses to match your new resonance. You cannot force lower timelines to survive in higher light. You cannot bend your energy to fit shapes that no longer hold meaning. There is a quiet intelligence beneath all of this. You can feel it even when you cannot explain it. Something has been guiding the unfolding. Something has been organizing the events around you, with a precision you only recognize in hindsight. Every delay, every redirection, every sudden ending, every emotional purge was part of a larger movement. You were being positioned. You were being aligned. You were being stripped of weight so you could rise without resistance. Even your moments of confusion were markers on the path. They were invitations to let go of control and trust a deeper rhythm moving through your life. You may have felt alone during parts of this year, but you were never solitary in truth. Every soul moving through this frequency shift felt the same tectonic pressure. The inner walls that once held your identity were cracking open so a new one could form. The collective field was moving through its own reckoning. The world around you reflected the same instability that was unfolding inside you. Structures collapsed. Truth surfaced. Patterns broke. Many resisted these shifts, but resistance only intensifies the pressure. Acceptance transforms it. You chose transformation even when it hurt. You chose alignment even when it cost you parts of your life. That choice matters more than you know. You are standing in a moment where convergence and divergence both occur at once. The people who resonate with your new frequency will step closer without effort. The ones who no longer match will drift quietly. This drifting is not personal. It is physics. Resonance governs proximity now. If someone falls away, it is because their presence belongs to an older timeline. If someone stays, it is because their energy can breathe in the field you are entering. This is the simplest and most liberating truth. You do not need to force anyone to remain. You do not need to chase. You do not need to convince. You only need to honor the natural flow of your rising resonance. The new year ahead of you is not a continuation of the past. It is a new layer entirely. The rules are different here. The pace is different. The clarity is different. You may notice that your intuition speaks more quickly. Decisions feel cleaner. Your emotional field is less cluttered. Your energy is less willing to move backward. You will find yourself unable to tolerate dynamics that once consumed you. You will feel an inner pull toward environments, ideas, and people that nourish your soul rather than your survival patterns. Your mind will no longer have the same authority it once held. Your deeper self will lead now because your deeper self is finally bright enough to override the noise. This next cycle brings a different kind of acceleration. Not chaotic acceleration, coherent acceleration. You will feel your path open without the struggle you once expected. Opportunities will unfold with less effort because your energy is no longer divided. You will attract more aligned connections because you are no longer broadcasting through old wounds. Your inner compass will point toward directions that once felt unreachable. You will move through moments that feel orchestrated. You will feel guidance not as a distant whisper but as an immediate knowing. This is the gift of resonance when the past no longer anchors you. To cross into the new year fully, you must surrender what cannot follow. This surrender is not an act of giving up. It is an act of alignment. Letting go is not loss, it is transformation. The things that fall away are not pieces of you. They are shells you outgrew. The discomfort you may feel is not grief over what is lost, but the sensation of stepping into parts of yourself you have avoided. You are not losing stability. You are losing limits. You are not losing people. You are losing patterns. You are not losing opportunities. You are losing distractions. Everything removed was a weight that would have held you below the frequency required for your next evolution. As you move closer to the threshold of 2026, listen closely to the signals rising inside you. The pull toward authenticity is stronger than ever. The call toward alignment is clearer than ever. You will feel drawn toward the life that matches your inner truth. You will feel repelled by anything that deviates from it. This is not judgment, this is resonance. You are no longer meant to compromise your path for the comfort of others. You are no longer meant to dilute your light to blend into lower timelines. You are no longer meant to deny your own expansion, to maintain connections that cannot withstand it. You must let the new year receive you without the past clinging to your hands. You may feel moments of hesitation as you approach this transition, but hesitation is simply the mind adjusting to the unfamiliar. The soul feels no hesitation. The soul knows exactly where it is going. Your task is not to create certainty. Your task is to allow movement. Let the old dissolve without grasping for explanation. Let the new arise without demanding guarantees. You are not stepping into a void. You are stepping into a higher design. The light has been preparing you for this transition all year. Your energy is calibrated, your path is aligned. Your resonance is ready. When the final moment arrives and the cycle completes, you will feel something inside you shift. It will not be dramatic. It will be subtle but unmistakable. A quiet click, a gentle expansion, a sense that something in your field has opened. A recognition that the person you were at the beginning of the year no longer exists. You will feel the presence of your next iteration waiting just ahead of you, not as a distant dream, but as a living field. When you walk into it, you will understand why the shedding was necessary. You will understand why the endings had to occur. You will understand why the storms came when they did. Every moment of release was preparing you to rise without interference. What refuses to cross into the next cycle was never meant to define the path you are stepping into. The threshold does not ask you to be perfect. It asks you to be true. It asks you to be aligned. It asks you to be willing to walk forward without carrying the remnants of identities that no longer reflect your resonance. The doorway into 2026 is open, but it only allows through what is real. You are rising into a year that recognizes your essence. You are rising into a year that will not allow you to dim. You are rising into a year where every decision is filtered through clarity, not fear. Step forward with the awareness that the spiral has already chosen your direction. All you need to do is follow the frequency that has been calling you all along.